So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Went into Attack on Titan's World. So let's start the series. Naruto Uzumaki's head sat lazily on his fist, staring out in nothingness. It had been some time since the absorption of Kagaya Otsutsuki and the expunging of his mortality. He'd been to many dimensions after his life in the elemental nations came to an end, some laced with magic and bodacious amounts of women, one with a tragically stupid but honorable pirate, and even one with a dark-skinned catwoman who he had many, maybe too many, children with. Time always continued onwards, his immortality proving its existence once more as he left behind friends and newly found loved ones. In the end, when the times passed and he was no longer needed, he'd return to this sort of limbo state, observing different universes like a meddling god. Right now, he was blankly watching 3 different timelines. One had a wizarding world filled with folktales and copious amounts of British people. Another had these children calling themselves the Greek gods who fornicated with men and women like rabbits in heat, placing hardships on the children formed in their union. And lastly, was a world where cruelty and pain were simply another one of life's immeasurable sufferances. Peering in on this savage land, it was salvageable. It will take time. But he had more than enough time. These people needed some minor shoves in the correct direction, maybe some hope as well. Given that hope seemed to be a taboo topic, as he observed closely, it seemed fear and famine ruled over the damned in the form of large humanoid creatures called Titans. Interesting. 3 massive walls separated a large kingdom. From the commoners in Wall Maria, to merchants in Wall Rose, and finally the rich nobility in Wall Sina. How quaint! Military forces were divided into 3 parties: Survey Corps, Garrison Regime, and the MP Brigade. Naruto couldn't get all the information from just observing, so the final preparations were being made for his arrival. It was about time he got off his ass anyway. He walked to his armory where he stored his prized possessions from his past, whether it be from other dimensions, spoils of war, or from his original lifeline. The white-haired Jubi Jinchuriki made his way around the mid-sized room reminiscing briefly about his old ways. As Naruto passed the numerous shelves of everything he's ever stored within this pocket dimension, his fingers trailed a large blade from his original life, Kubikarabocho. Now this was a weapon, once wielded by the man who taught him the sacrifices and responsibilities of a shinobi, Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the mist, a perfect blade for cutting down naked abominations. From what he had seen, this kingdom was the only settlement in a wide-scale area, so he, being an outsider and all, needed to catch the scouting legion out on an expedition. He wondered what their reaction would be. He threw the Zanbatsu over his right shoulder and transformed his body to a 5 feet 3 inches version of himself. Blonde hair and blue eyes replaced his silver locks and accompanying purple-ringed eyes. Being a child was the most fun at the beginning of these adventures. He edged an onyx portal with a menacing look and walked through it. He stepped out of his portal and onto a grassy meadow. As far as he could see, there were oceans of grass with displaced trees in random areas. The wind softly caressed the long blades of grass, making them dance to the ethereal tune. Thistles and primulas sprouted randomly in abundance to his presence, lengthening and budding to his divine presence. It would have been beautiful if there weren't ugly mugs stomping around everywhere. The blonde knelt, placing his index finger to the ground as he did so. He extended his senses 5 kilometers, picking different signatures of life forms, in which he discovered the presence of humans. From the way they were closely organized, it was an easy guess at who it was. This was a perfect time to gather up some lunkheads and stalk them like a herd of sheep. Heavy footsteps rattled the ground near his position. It seemed he wouldn't have to wait around long. All he had to do was jog at a moderate pace and the Titans would follow behind. Hopefully he wouldn't give any of the soldiers a heart attack once dozens of giants came stampeding in their direction. Survey Corps Head Commander's Division. A green flare was shot into the sky, sending the Survey Corps east around the forest in front of them. 250 men and women scattered themselves in groups of 2 to 3, and surrounded the central control line from the U-shaped outside scouting perimeter. They had been 2 hours into the mission escorting an entourage of medical herbs and perishables. It was another run for higher-ups who needed the necessities provided in untouched quantities outside of the walls. The mission was led by the commander, Keith Shotties B.A., a calculating man with a scruff of a beard. Shotties was the 12th commander of the Scouting Corps, and a decent one at that. He was a slave driver in perfection, but for good cause considering the casualty rates of their line of work. Adjacent to the head position was his right-hand man, Owen Smith, and soon to be commander. He was smart, strategic, and ambitious to his goals of discovering the truths hidden by their ancestors. He was a dangerous man, both in mind and in body. Fellow men of Irwin's elite unit flowed in tightly behind. They were a working machine, but too important to be put on the front lines. It was how it always was and would still continue to be. Commander. Shotties turned towards a soldier gathering to his left. Urgent message from the left E5 unit, staged in the front row, the man bellowed. The bald man didn't usually get urgent messages in forms other than casual flare shots. Something must have gone wrong, and when something goes wrong, people die. Titan sighting? The man nodded. Shoot off your flares then, maggot. The soldiers seemed to scuffle under the intense gaze of their commander. But what they had seen, it was not natural. No, impossible. Well, sir, we don't have flares for this type of engagement. Somebody on the Eastern Front, that is not a soldier, is massacring a large group of Titans by himself without 3DM gear. Irwin and his elite squad's attention instantly shot to the young soldier. What? Keith yelled, eyes wider than saucers. How's that possible? The soldier was sweating profusely, his own eyes dilated in disbelief. I don't know, sir. A civilian must have escaped the gate when we left, he answered cluelessly. Keith frowned, looking forward momentarily as their horses galloping overlaid the silence. Smith, the tall blond man's head perked up. Take Otto and Gertrude to E5 and find out what the fuck is going on, he ordered with a scowl. Yes, sir. E5 unit frontline. Irwin's elite squad could see the mayhem from over a kilometer away. Titans were waving randomly, trying to pick something out of the air, and moments later another wave of blood would gush in streams. They'd fall to the ground in heaps and instantly start decomposing. Off to the side, the E5 unit watched with open mouths. Weber, report. Irwin commanded one of the women, frozen in awe. The blonde shook her shoulder, knocking her from her stupor. A man was darting back and forth between Titans of all sizes, cutting them on the nape, or beheading and continuing on to the next one. Their bodies rumbled the ground beneath as they fell from towering heights. He held a large blade in both hands, cleanly slicing off 12-meter Titan's head and kicking it to the ground. The man was covered in blood over a shirtless body. It all steamed in excess, as if he was a cloud of smoke continuing to barrel through the herd. He jumped and leapt high in inhuman strides, not even stopping to confirm if he had killed a Titan or not. The man radiated bloodshed and strength never seen before. The fluidity of his movements were untraceable and deadly. The large creatures were nothing to this black blur, chunks of meaty flesh and blood sprayed in a 200-foot radius. The only sounds they heard was blade connecting to flesh and the grunts of pain, Titans desperately swinging at what they couldn't see. Body after body fell to ground in piles of decaying flesh with an unnatural smoky smell. Irwin and his squad watched in awe as the last of the bodies dropped in a pile of evaporating flesh and disembodied limbs. Finally, the last Titan fell to its knees before its head was cleaved off its head. Blood spurted at the feet of the soldiers as the head rolled to a stagnant position before them. All took an unconscious step back at the lifeless eyes of their mortal enemy staring back at them. Steam started rising from its form, encircling the figure as it closed in on them. The shadow of this person continued to shrink until it was at a shorter stature, much like the infamous Captain Levi, and that was when they first saw him. It's a child? Gertrude exclaimed at the figure in front of them. He was dressed in black pants, and red seam buckles around his wrists meant for continuous awkward movement of his wrists with the zanbatsu. His sun-kissed hair had silver streaks occasionally throughout his head of hair. He was a child, but his body and face were chiseled with a figure that shouldn't be attainable for someone of his age. The boy's face was completely blank as they studied him. No 3DM gear or standard-issued weapon seen on his person, only his freakishly large sword that looked like one of their own standard issues, just way bigger and cemented with an absent circle in the middle. There were so many questions that Irwin wanted answered, though. As he looked around at his subordinates, he could tell everyone around him was frightened of the child turning his blade on them. The blonde-haired boy continued to stare down the group. All the soldiers reached for their blades, hovering over their sheaths in expectancy. The soon-to-be commander narrowed his eyes, preparing for the boy to make one wrong move. Yo, head commander's division. The group was on their way back from the Eastern Front with the strange warrior child tied up on the back of Irwin's horse. He gave no resistance at any point. They could only be thankful for this. Everyone had the same question in their heads. Who the fuck is this kid? Commander Keith watched as they strode up to regain the formation with a weird figure which he assumed was the unknown entity seen fighting Titans. In tow, He was bonded in thin rope and cuffs on his feet. The boy was unnaturally calm and still, almost like being out in Titan territory was nothing out of the ordinary. Was he sleeping? The commander looked the blond man right in the face. Report, Captain. Yes, of course. We came upon a scene of 43 Titans ranging from sizes 4 to 13 meters. All slaughtered by this boy behind me. We haven't questioned him yet. He wields this sword of some kind on. As seen on the side of my horse, Shotties peeked over. Sure enough, the massive weapon was there. He wasn't frightened by the presence of the Titans. He made it seem so casual. It was a massacre as said by Private Weber. I'm afraid we have a serious matter on our hands, Commander. Whether good or bad is yet to be seen. Keith didn't know how to respond. Whoever this boy was, answers were needed before they returned to the walls with a potential threat. A threat that could manhandle 40 Titans, and seemed like it was the most common experience in the world. Wake him up, Smith did as told and nudged the careless blonde behind him. Naruto groggily sat up, his acting skills at the forefront. Ohio gozaimasu. Excuse me, young man? Naruto only titled his head in confusion. Where did you come from, and why are you here? Commander Shotties interrogated the boy. Once more, the boy gave no response. Well, you got a name, boy? Maybe the boy didn't understand him. Keith then pointed to himself. I am Keith Shotties, Keith Shadis. They all waited for the reaction of the bored child. He smirked and pointed at himself. My name is Naruto. Where are we? He asked like an innocent child, weaving around in his bindings. You're outside Wall Maria, boy. How'd you get out here? Although I wouldn't put it past the garrison to miss you leaving, they wouldn't be stupid enough to leave the gate unguarded. The 12th commander asked skeptically. The blue-eyed boy turned toward the commander. I don't remember, he said blandly. How did you kill over 40 Titans if you don't remember anything? Fighting skills like that aren't just forgotten. Dunno, it was just instinct, I guess. Everyone around the commander's sweat dropped. Instinct. This child thought this was a game. The short brown-haired man glared at the boy. How were they supposed to explain about a child from outside the walls that could slay insane amounts of Titans, and not even think more on it? What were they supposed to do with him? Shotties walked up to the young boy to where they were standing face to face. You fucking with me, boy? No, Mr. Shotties, Naruto said unflinchingly. The hazel-eyed man brows furrowed. What do I do with you then? He asked no one in particular. On one hand, he wanted to send the boy back to wherever in Wall Maria was home to him. But if word got out that some boy massacred a bunch of Titans, there's no way the government wouldn't come knocking. How could he just hand over someone like this to the rotten cores in the government? The Survey Corps needed someone like Naruto, child or not. The commander folded his arms over his chest, coming to a decision. All right then, how would you like to use your instinct to help free humanity from the Titans? Keith suggested, scratching his chin. His men looked at him like he was crazy. Okay, whatever, sounds easy enough. If it was possible, Shotties was sure his soldiers' eyes would pop from their sockets. The man chuckled at the blunt response. That's good enough for me. He clapped his hands together. Let us return to Shiganshina, and for Pete's sake get the boy a damn shirt. Owen was the first to vocalize his concern. Sir, are you sure about this? The child is still unknown. Plus he would have to go through the cadets to become a scout. If this gets to the higher-ups, then he'll be sent to the council. Shotties brought a hand to his chin and cupped his scruff. Well, has anyone in this group slayed 43 Titans? Or done all of it in one sitting? No, that's what I thought. I'll have to go behind the government's back on this one. I'm sure you all understand. Everyone nodded their heads. For the moment, they'd withhold their doubts. Arguing in Titan territory was a sure way to meet an earlier grave than their occupation would. Then it's settled. Welcome to the Survey Corps, Naruto. From now on, you will be a subordinate under none other than Owen Smith. Understood? The blond boy nodded and turned to the blond man beside him, giving him a lazy nod. A few hours later, Owen's second-in-command, Otto, was next to Owen on horseback, taking a brief look back at their new squad member. What do you think of him? He said quietly. The next commander's face was blank. I don't believe for a second that this boy has amnesia. My life's ambition has been to find humans from beyond our walls, and I think I might have found the very first person to justify my claims. His eyes gleamed, and a small smile crept onto his face. As they rode through the narrow gate of Wall Maria, Naruto noticed the people out on the streets waiting for the men to come back. Thanks to his efforts, they had only lost around 10 corpsmen compared to the estimated 90. This, of course, shocked the people on the street, knowing the Survey Corps often led mass casualty missions. From what he envisioned, he thought Shiganshina would be fairly poor, yet it wasn't all too bad. It was lively and happy in a comfortable atmosphere that came with the comfortability the wall placed between them and the Titans outside. It was quite large in every direction he looked. I guess that's what you'd get when this is the only living settlement around. The boy walked adjacent to his now captain, and soon to be commander. Commoners looked at him quizzically, knowing that he wasn't there on the way out. Whispers were heard here and there about who the strange boy was, and of course he could hear it all but didn't give it too much thought. He felt a presence that was different from the rest, one that wasn't felt around any others he'd seen since his short time here. Naruto's senses kicked in, and he zoned in on where he felt the distinction. It was a mellow scent, like a superficial stench barely resonating through the air. His blue orbs locked onto a kid his age or younger. Naruto stared him dead in the eyes, as if looking for something deeper within his soul. Interestingly, there's nothing that separates him from the others. Yet he has something he's hiding. In the crowd, Eren always enjoyed watching the Survey Corps return from missions, and today, due to the small grins on the corpsmen's faces, was a successful day they hadn't seen in a long time. He trailed down the line of soldiers, a happy smile plastered on his face. Suddenly, he felt the eyeballs of one of the soldiers burn into his own, a terrifying sight that made his stomach twist uneasily. A blond boy about his age, walking alongside the Big Shot section commander, a few spots back from the commander. He wasn't in uniform and he didn't have any distinct crests or 3DM gear as the other soldiers had. The blonde seemed well built even for his age. Broad shoulders and shoulder-length wild blonde hair with 2 streams of hair down the sides of his face. And that sword, Eren had never seen anything like that before. Blue eyes continued to stare at him even as he passed his line of sight. Just who is that? Why have I never seen him before? Mikasa, did you see that kid? He won't stop looking at me, and it's a little scary. Mikasa frowned, giving the mysterious blonde boy a puzzled and dark glare. Yeah, I noticed. I've been hearing whispers that he's from outside the walls. Eren's eyes widened and shivered slightly. Whoever this guy was, he was staring at him and only him, even under Mikasa's intense gaze. Yet, if he was from the outside then, this would be amazing. Let's go and get Armin. He grabbed Mikasa by the hand and darted off the boxes, sticks falling off in the sudden movement. Peaceful sleep came rather easily to him. He wasn't sure whether anyone would try anything against him, but for safe measure he had seals placed around his room that would disrupt his sleep and into an upright and ready position at a moment's notice. It might have been overkill considering this place was lax of good soldiers. It seemed. It didn't bother him too much. The only person he had to depend on was himself. He couldn't always save everyone, and he came to terms with that a long time ago. He wasn't responsible for everything around him even if he did have an unbelievable ability to control his environment. So as he made his way to Captain Shorty, it didn't hurt to learn new faces on this timeline, especially Levi. I can't wait to see how he reacts when I basically call him a chibi. As he rounded a flush red brick wall, he noticed the all too familiar bored gaze that he had seen from others in his past endeavors. He always got along with people like Levi. They were too much like himself in more ways than one. The survey captain noticed the newcomer wearing the usual Survey Corps uniform with his abnormally large sword on his back. To him it was more like an overly large toy knife, but it didn't matter, regardless. As long as he used it to propel humanity's starvation for freedom from the Titans, those were his wishes of course, yet he didn't buy the story he gave his commanding officers. The blonde-haired boy was still suspicious to him. He'd have to earn his respect as his subordinate on his squad. Captain Shorty. It seemed everyone in the perimeter of the two suddenly stopped after seeing the young soldier talk to his commanding officer that way. And Captain Levi of all people, supposed outsider or not, they knew the black-haired man did not take kindly to being called short to his face. The captain stifled a bored gaze, trying not to act like it bothered him. Deep inside, he was furious. He held grudges well and would do so with this ammunition. Naruto noticed the conflicting feelings that were barely traceable over the serious man. He was controlling his emotions well though. I like this guy. So, shall we go, brat? Levi tried his best not to jab the disrespectful blonde across the face. Probably wouldn't be the best first impression to his team if a child showed up with bruise marks from him. Petra's softness was rubbing off on him. Naruto nodded and saluted with a snarky grin on his face. Both marched off in silence, much to the captain's delight. HQ tent coordination. Naruto and Levi strode up to a few makeshift tents meant for HQ controlled assignment detail. Anything needed to be done was assigned through the superiors when expeditions weren't planned. Levi stopped in front of one of the smaller tents, and told him to wait until he called him to come inside. Levi entered the tent where he was met by 4 of his subordinate members of his elite squad. On the far left was Petra Rao. Petra was a relatively short woman with blonde-orangish hair and brown eyes. She wore the typical uniform of a member of the Survey Corps, with a white button-up shirt underneath. Titan kills 10 solo. She was utterly devoted to Captain Levi. She was kind and caring, almost motherly-like to the others in her group, yet, at a moment's notice she was utterly ruthless to anyone who stood in her way. Next to her was Aluo Bozado. Aluo had a much older appearance than his peers, having more pronounced wrinkles despite being implied to be around the same age as his teammates. He had slightly curly, brown hair styled in an undercut and small eyes. He wore the standard Survey Corps uniform, as well as a cravat, and his eyebrows were often pulled down in a condescending manner, similar to Levi. Aluo purposely styled his hair and cravat to resemble his captain, Levi. He was a very outspoken and confident individual. The brown-haired man had the highest Titan kill count in 39 solo kills, second only to his captain. Aluo also held a somewhat infamous record of biting his tongue repeatedly on expedition missions as well. On a bedstool to his right was ELD Jin. ELD had long blonde hair which had a middle parting and a bun folded at the back to keep his hair tied. He also had a small beard. Like most other Survey Corps members, he wore a green cloak with the Wings of Freedom emblem on the back. He wore the same uniform as the other Corps soldiers. Titan kills 14 solo. ELD was rather quiet, but when he needed to be, the long blonde-haired man came out blunt and straightforward. The veteran was the most experienced on the squad, which he often boasted about when conferring Petra and Aluo about the time they solid themselves on their first expedition. Lastly, sitting on a wooden chair to the far right was Gunther Schultz. Gunther was a man of average height with a slightly darker skin tone. He wore a short crop of brown hair that was kept to a point on the back of his head, as most of the soldiers. His attire consisted of a short light brown leather jacket with the badge of the Survey Corps on both shoulders, on the front left pocket, and on the center of the back, a light-colored shirt, a dark brown sash around the waist covering the hips, white pants and dark brown knee-high leather boots. Titan kills 7 solo. Gunther was a very observant and obedient to his captain's demand. He was untrustworthy of new people and new environments he hadn't experienced yet, therefore making him an ideal soldier. "Why are we gathering, Captain?" Ola asked in his most uncaring voice, trying to resemble his respectable leader. It seemed the others had the same line of thought. They were together most of the time. But today it seemed rather important for them to be collective in one place without mission assignments. Levi was trying his best not to sigh. "We have been given an additional squad member. Standard procedure is 5 to 6 members on an elite survey squad, yet we have been together for a while now. Do the higher-ups believe we need the extra hands?" Gunther autonomously replied. Gunther was right in a sense. I just had this nondescript child dumped into my lap, yet Naruto had special abilities. Rowan was clear in that regard. Levi raised his voice slightly. "Well, you are correct in assumption. This one I've been assigned to is from outside the walls." All mouths around the semicircle were agape with shocked expressions. All were wondering the same question. Who the hell were they going to have to work with, and why was he being thrown onto their squad? "Ha ha! Man, Captain Levi, when you want to be, you can be a total jokester." The Levi lookalike was holding his stomach laughing, yet Levi was not amused. Levi turned to face the flaps of the tent. If they thought the first part was a shock, then they're in for a complete upheaval. He crossed his arms and yelled out in the direction of the outside, "Naruto, come in." The Levi squad were on the edge of their seats, waiting for the first glance of the outsider. The sun shined on the back of Naruto as he strolled lazily into the tent with his hands in his pockets. The blonde had heard the conversation in the tent. Levi must have thought he was out of earshot. A figure with blonde untamed hair pushed one of the flaps to the side calmly. The sun outlined his body, and only the mere outages of his figure could be seen. His body shape reminded them of their captain, short but sturdy, yet he also had a chiseled jawline and broad shoulders. It was hard to see with the sun in their eyes, but it looked as if he had a rather large object on his back that stretched from his head to his toes. As the flap closed and the sun no longer shining through, the group got a better look at the outsider. An immature face looked on lazily at the horrified expressions in front of him. His blue eyes screamed boredom, yet on guard as well. His expression mirrored their captain perfectly. The blonde looked around the room at the faces he was meant to meet. He had already heard their names and distinct location of the voices to the particular person, although the one female member was common sense. Yo, Captain Levi, is this some kind of joke? The commander is assigning us a prepubescent kid? All the squad members bobbed their heads in agreement with Aluo. Children of anything were meant for the training regime, and only then could they become soldiers around the age of 15. This Naruto was no older than 11 years of age. Levi had been saving his time for an awfully loud and long sigh. Afraid not. Looks can often be deceiving. Naruto, introduce yourself, and to set their hearts at ease, tell them the other thing. The other thing? This Aluo character won't be able to handle the truth. The blue-eyed soldier nodded. Okay then, I'm Naruto, 10 years of age. This beautiful woman must be Petra Ral. The blonde orange-haired woman blushed at the admiration but quickly collected herself. This must be Captain Levi's brother, Aluo Bozado. Aluo merely grunted at the jab, as if he didn't get crap for it all the time. You must be LD Jin, since you haven't spoken yet. A nod was all he got for the introduction. And last but not least, Onion Head, or Gunther Schultz. Gunther grit his teeth at the disrespectful nickname, but did not allow himself to fall to the level of an immature child. The captain walked up to Naruto and stood shoulder to shoulder with him, his arms still crossed in a lazy and self-confident way. Did you hear the story of the black mist the mess hall was blabbering about yesterday? They all heard the story through the grapevine, yet that's all it was, a folklore. Petra was the first to connect the dots of said story. Gears were running rampant in her head. 10-year-old boy. Outsider? Massacring titans with a massive blade? 40 titan confirmed kills in one expedition, in 15 minutes? No way, Captain, are you saying? The woman looked petrified in the shock of her self-learned discovery. The black-haired captain nodded his head in recognition. What is Captain saying, Petra? Aluo looked around the room for recognition in his same train of thought. Am I the only one out of the loop here? ELD took his chance to speak. Aluo, what Captain is saying is that the boy from the story is actually this boy in front of us. Gunther's sweat dropped at his comrade's lack of understanding. Is it true then? Captain? Levi took his time to respond. It was a lot to take in for anyone. The man couldn't blame them. Naruto was an anomaly never before seen in their cruel way of life. When he had heard the news firsthand from his superiors, he had his suspicions before even laying eyes on the child. Just looking at Naruto now had given him hope for a better future, maybe one even outside the walls. He had lost everything to this world, and as such, getting his hopes up for trivial matters they did not quite understand was improbable. Yet, here this boy was, doing the impossible at a young age, and barely batting an eye doing so. Yes, Naruto spoke for his captain. The others looked for confirmation in their respected captain. Levi didn't confirm or deny. His silence was the only answer they needed. You've gotta be shitting me. Aluo grew pale, struggling to come to terms with someone like him actually being a real person. He envisioned some barbarian, not a child. Petra saw the awkward silence as a way to get her questions through without interference. Where did you come from? She observed carefully to see any mannerisms that would confirm a deceptive nature. Naruto narrowed his eyes. That is confidential. Commander Baldi would not appreciate my insubordination. Second day in this wonderful place. Petra's sweat dropped at the blatant disrespect to their esteemed commander. No one had the gall to talk about the commander for fear of his wrath. But Naruto didn't even break a sweat. She was still curious about his origins, but going against a direct order in favor of personal ambitions was a federal crime she wasn't willing to commit. She stood up and came face to face with Naruto. Can you at least show us that sword on your back? Naruto smiled a foxy grin and unlocked the sword from the diagonal position on his back. Well, this is my blade, Kubikuribocho, or decapitating carving knife. It's 5 feet tall, and 7.5 inches wide. It's used for, well, you know. He was still smiling, rubbing the back of his head. That's a rather interesting weapon of choice. Isn't it heavy and hard to use? The blonde obviously saw the curious looks around the room at his abnormal weapon. It was evident these people had never seen anything like this before. Heavy? Not really hard to use? Not for me. If you don't believe me, try holding it up at a 90-degree angle away from your body with one hand. Naruto gestured for her to take the handle. As Petra grabbed it, she could feel the uncomfort of using such a large and difficult maneuvering weapon. Their standard-issued swords and gear were meant for speed and adjustment to difficult angles at a moment's notice. There's no way she'd be able to wield something like this in battle. She tried to hold the blade straight out from her body, but it was deemed impossible for her, as she struggled to even raise it above her waist. Alluo thought she was just messing around, so he stood up to have his chance at the weapon. What the hell is this thing made out of? This has to be 20 to 30 pounds. Naruto laughed and took the blade back. It's all about momentum. You may be asking yourselves how I use it. Well, whereas normal blades are meant for numerous small cuts, my blade is meant for large, singular cuts meant to decapitate in one fluent swipe. It would have been a funny sight to anyone who had come into the tent at that time, a 10-year-old child holding a massive blade, and lecturing others twice his age. Hey! Don't be a smartass brat, you're just fresh meat now. Alluo smiled triumphantly at gaining his ego back after the embarrassing feat. After Captain Levi, I'm second in command, so I'm in charge of you. My kill count is also only 2 to 1, and again that's Captain Levi. Said man interrupted after the tantrum Alluo threw. Yes, Alluo is my second in command, but it seems Naruto is second in confirmed solo kills. Remember the aspect from the story where he slaughtered 43 titans by his lonesome? Captain Owen saw it in action and said it was quite the sight. Naruto smirked at Alluo's face scrunched up in frustration. Well, I can respect you as such. If Captain Owen vouches for you, then I'll follow suit. Welcome to Levi's squad, blonde brat. A month later. 49th Expedition. Mission Objective. Escort classified materials. Naruto and Petra were positioned in the second row, 45 degrees east, placed as reinforcements of the east front line. Naruto was dressed in black rider pants and black leather boots with red inseams that hugged tightly. Under his green survey cloak was a black skin-tight long-sleeve shirt. The blonde also had a black face mask covering his neck to his nose. Down his sides were his 3DM gear. He proved he didn't need the maneuverability, but as standard procedure stated, Naruto would have to have gear on at all times during expeditions. Because of his choice of blade, configurations were made to accustom to his style of fighting. In result, Naruto had triggers on the back of his hands that would fire when he flexed his forearm and pointed in his desired direction. His first time using the adjusted set proved his natural ability to control his environment entirely. They had him run the training core track on his own. Levi had expected him to be somewhere in the average time range considering it was his first time using the 3DM gear. How wrong he was. He obliterated the course record time for cadets by 7.5 minutes, without a single mistake, a natural prodigy in their midst, and he was a machine of cold raw power. Play Kali Yuga by Ghost Main. His cerulean eyes peered over the mask in deep focus, sensing for the life force around himself, scanning for titans that broke through the front line. 13-meter titan. 67 meters NE, 120 meters out, approaching. Naruto bellowed out over to his partner. All right, Naruto, take care of it and figure out what section fell. Go. At the command, Naruto stood on the back of his horse and backflipped. In half of his rotation he locked onto a tree and shot out like a bullet in the direction of his objective. Show off. Petra shook her head with a smile. She shot a black flare for a misplaced titan breaking the formation. The blond boy caught sight of his target, and disappeared in a black flash and aims for reappearing before it. Naruto shot out of his extended shunshin, running up an arm of an unaware abnormal titan running like a retarded drunk. Naruto flash-stepped with blinding speed up the shoulder before barreling in a spin with inhuman speed, Levi's finisher move. The momentum carried him through the nape, slicing halfway through the head in the process, leaving the decaying head hanging loosely from its shoulders as it hit the ground with a heavy thud. If this titan was running straight shot through the line, means he must have ignored the others in favor of what was behind them, meaning backup was needed. Naruto vanished once again. 3 frontline members were engaging and losing in combat versus 3 7 to 10 meter titans. They couldn't seem to get clean shots in without having a large hand swipe at them blindly. One of the survey corpsmen shot his cord into the temple of the 10-meter titan looking for a clean shot to its blind spot. As he shot across, the uncoordinated titan's hand shot up and grabbed him before he could make the finishing move. Dan! One of the men screamed in horror as the titans converged on their comrade. Dan shouted in terror at being raised up to the mouth of the beast, its terrifying gin plastered on its face permanently. He heard a swish of wind go by his face and a decapitated head fell sideways off its disfigured body. The 2 other titans followed in suit, dropping off to the side with evaporating flesh, disembodied and decaying. A short figure with blonde hair and black clothing came out of the smoky flesh covered in misting blood of the titans he just slain. Smoke emitted from his pores like he had been on fire, a large zabuto thrown over his shoulder, and a steady pace walking towards the man still wrapped in the titan's hand. Dan watched as the misty black figure cut the fingers around him and pulled on the back of the 3DM straps. "Are you good to stand?" The black-clad man offered his barren hand. The stories people had been spitting out about the mysterious outsider Commander Shotties had found on the most recent expedition, the description of the folklore matched this man perfectly. "Why, you're the Black Mist." The man shakily rose to his feet with the help of Naruto. The blonde laughed and his eyes closed in a U-shape. "I prefer Naruto, but either is fine, I guess." The brown-haired man nodded dumbly, with his eyes still shaking from the stress of the almost being devoured. "Yes, of course, you saved my life, thank you." Dan held out his hand and offered a shake of appreciation, hesitatingly. Naruto shook back slightly, surprising the man. "No worries, I have to report back. Continue on. Fire your flare first before engaging next time. I almost wasn't able to help in time." The blonde interlocked the large sword back to its mechanical grip on his back. The other 2 men had come out of their trance to run over to their friend and comrade, saved by the mysterious black-clad figure. "We apologize. We were surprised from a blind spot and were unable to fire before we were surrounded." Naruto nodded his head in understanding. "Are you able to continue on?" All 3 saluted. "Yes, sir." Naruto stared in bewilderment. 3 teenagers saluting him? They had to be fresh recruits just out of the cadets. "You don't have to yes sir me. We have the same rank after all. Get back to it. I'll be going now." Naruto sprinted back in the direction of his partner, latching onto the occasional tree until he was out of eyesight for a shunshin. "So the stories about him were true," Dan said conclusively. The men next to him were still shocked to their cores at the near-death experience they had. It was like those titans were nothing to him. "Of course he's on Captain Levi's squad. The guy's a damn monster." HQ Commander Tent. "Ral, report. Recently assigned Commander Owen announced to the woman." All went as expected on the East Line. Naruto was sent out to reinforce vital positions in combat. East front lines report 32 solo kills from Naruto, all quick and merciless, 1 death and 2 critically injured. "It seems your strategy was a success, Commander. Congratulations on your first lead expedition." Petra smiled at Erwin, who slightly smiled back. The commander spoke again. "Ral, personal assessment of Naruto." Petra thought about it for a second before replying. "Well, sir, if I had to describe who Naruto was most related to in terms of his actions, him and Captain Levi could be blood brothers, although Naruto can tend to be light-hearted when he needs to be. But when he is called for, he is ruthless without question. He has the mentality of a Vitrian soldier, and skill never seen before by anyone. If Captain heard me say that I believe the boy is more skilled than him, I believe he'd beat me into submission." The woman shivered at that train of thought. Lei was second to none in a fight, yet Naruto was always outdoing even his best successes. Very well, good job, Ral. So far it seems our provisions to ensure he is loyal and capable have proven fruitful. You're free to go." The blonde man waved off his subordinate and returned to his work quietly. "Naruto, you have proven to be a valuable asset. Victory for humanity is always within grasps when yourself is present. The future is bright." 5 months later, Shiganshina, Forest District. Naruto laid under the shade of a willow tree, shielding himself from the intensity of the sun. It had been a while since he had gotten to relax like this, since his short time here. The success of the Survey Corps missions was substantially growing, therefore, with success came frequency and the demand for natural pleasantries only found outside the wall. With Commander Irwin's new strategic procedures and movements on the expeditions, the casualty rate was lower than it had ever been, though the credit went to Irwin. Everyone in the Corps knew it was one man or boy that made it all possible. Black Mist. For some it was a privilege to see him in combat. For those inside of the walls, none had ever got the chance to know of his successes, seeing they were rarely talked about. Naruto was alright with just being a folklore legend. It was more plausible for his position of saving this dimension from the vile cannibalistic creatures called Titans. He felt like he belonged somewhere without being praised as an almighty. It was great to feel normal in a sense. He drifted off into a nap. Cammy knew he needed one after being put to work under Captain Levi. The sounds of loose leaves and bladed grass getting swished around in the gentle breeze was all the peace he needed for such. 3 people watched from a distance, observing their target lounge underneath an isolated tree. I wonder if they'll come to confront me yet, Naruto thought before his drowsiness took over. This our chance. Finally, after so long, Eren exclaimed, almost ripping himself from his boots with excitement. Eren Jaeger was 9.5 years old. He was of average height and muscular build. To anyone, he was just another face in the crowd, but below the surface, there was much more to him than what meets the eye. He has a reasonably long, rounded face and sizable, expressive, gray eyes. His hair is short and brown, and his bangs fall in a natural, middle-parted, curtain-type style. His eccentricity for the Survey Corps was what drove his curiosity off the edge when being faced with the potential to talk to the boy he had seen half a year ago. He always seems to get away when we get close to him. But Eren's right. This might be our only chance, Mikasa replied. Mikasa Ackerman was 9.5 years old. Although she was slightly older by a month, she was the adoptive sister of Eren Jaeger after his father found her family murdered in their home. She had long black hair that split in two, which covered the middle of her face. Her black coal eyes were emotionless and hidden to those she did not trust. Mikasa was considered to be the last of Asian descent in the entire kingdom. She wore a knee-length white dress, a light cardigan, brown boots, and her signature red scarf. Never once had she removed the scarf Eren had given her the night of her parents' deaths. She was utterly devoted to Eren in every way and vowed to protect him at all costs, after he saved her from a fate worse than death. I brought the book along to ask about certain things to confirm my theories. A blond boy with shaggy blonde hair reported behind the 2 that were his shield from the bullies in town. Armin Arlert was 9 years old and the youngest of the group. He was extremely intelligent and often dreamed of what life would be like on the outside without Titans. He was often bullied over his ideals, but was determined to prove his views were fruitful one day. He wore a black jacket with black trim on the outer edges, with a gray button-up underneath. He wore casual brown khakis and brown leather boots, like his friends. He also was extremely interested in the mysterious outsider after hearing about his origins from Eren and Mikasa, and he was their age, which was the most interesting thing of all. They made their approach slowly, in hopes of catching him off guard and cornering him for questioning. They don't think I know they're there. This should be amusing. I finally get to meet the mysterious Eren Jaeger and his loyal followers. Naruto smirked inwardly. Eren, Mikasa, and Armin stood in U-shape around the sleeping Naruto. This was their time to finally learn about the outside. The prone soldier spoke. Ah, interesting. After all these months you 3 finally gained the courage. Naruto never opened his eyes and continued to lay with his arms behind his head. All 3 thought they were so clever. Was he going to give them the slip again? He seemed mildly curious about their presence, and that seemed good enough since he hadn't moved. Hi, well, you're from the outside, and we wanted to know about what it's like, Eren stated bluntly. The nervousness from the 3 was all Naruto needed to spark their interests. I don't give out information to those who don't give out their names first, but that's not needed considering I already know who you all are. Naruto peeked a blue eye at their reactions, secretly laughing inside. All 3 were trying their best to compose themselves. They were doing a rather good job, well Mikasa, more than the other buffoons. Mikasa Ackerman, not easily intimidated. Just from that dark gaze I can tell you're rather protective of your loved ones, perhaps lost ones in the past you couldn't prevent. Naruto perked up and pushed his back to the tree behind him. Mikasa's eyes widened at the implications, and the casual notion that he knew her better than she knew herself was unnerving. How does he know about my past? Judging by her shocked and traumatized face, he hit it right on the nail. I apologize if that made you revisit buried memories. I myself have lost many people in my life. It is good that you have found new people in your life you can confide your trust and love in. Someone once told me, you are only truly strong when you have someone precious to you. I believe that statement wholeheartedly relates to you. Naruto saw their bewildered faces at his wise speech. It seemed his words still had that effect on others around him. Refreshing as it was, he truly did want to nap. I'll indulge you on the presumption you believe I'm from the outside. You each get a question, no more, no less. Is this acceptable? Naruto quirked an eyebrow with his arms crossed. If they had removed the mask on his face, they would have seen the grin on his face. All 3 nodded dumbly. Perhaps not what they wanted, but better than him disappearing again. They thought he would be more interesting to talk to, but he seemed rather rude and bored. They all just wanted to grunt in annoyance. This was supposed to be us leading the questionnaire, and he totally flipped the roles, Armin concluded. Naruto pointed to the Eren, you weirdo. The brown-haired boy's knuckles clenched white with his anger of being belittled. It seemed the black-haired girl's intense glare didn't like the sentiment either. He laughed at their angered expressions. Go ahead, weirdo. Eren grit his teeth with an angered look at Naruto. The blonde-haired boy lazily looked him in the eye, an expression that said, are you done? Where did you come from? Naruto raised his eyebrow and ran his hand through his spiky blonde hair. Can you three keep a secret? The kid's eyes all widened, thirsting for the exact origins of the mysterious boy. This was a chance that no one else would get to hear. All three were overflowing with curiosity, although Mikasa wouldn't show it. The silence was deafening, awaiting his answer. I don't remember, he laughed hysterically. Eren had enough of his evasiveness. You bastard. How can you not remember? He spat out through his grit teeth. The brown-haired boy was fuming. This is everything to us. The future is supposed to be better than what we have now, and he is just disregarding our dreams. Naruto raised his hands to calm the kid down. Easy, what I meant to say was, I'm from nowhere. I've been to a lot of places, but I've never really stayed in one place. It was true he had been to many places in his life, just never in this world. He only observed from a far distance. Although if they asked, he'd tell them of one of his discoveries when observing this dimension. They all had stars in their eyes, places. It's rather vague, but said word holds value for deeper meanings. Armin flustered with anticipation. Naruto continued along the line and pointed at Mikasa. Mikasa-chan, you next. She flustered at the affectionate suffix, faltering in her emotionless facade for a second, before Eren interrupted. What the hell? Mikasa is now Mikasa-chan, and my name is Weirdo. Eren bellowed out, flaring his arms in an exasperated motion. He calmed down after a few seconds, everyone staring at him patiently. Continue, Mikasa-chan. It seemed the black-eyed girl was prepared for the second time, now staring at him expressionless before speaking her question. If you're our age, then why are you in the Survey Corps? Well, Commander Keith Shotties demanded I be placed in the military upon my arrival in Shiganshina. Didn't really have a choice, but I enjoy it now nonetheless. Armin and Mikasa found the response to be misleading and not quite what they were looking for. He was hiding something, and he was damn good at it too. Eren didn't seem to care either. He heard Commander Keith Shotties and tuned the rest out in daydreaming of the day he'd become a Survey Corpsman. It seems you have one more question, so Bocut, what will it be? Although Naruto wouldn't say it, he was most interested in what Armin would ask him, knowing he had one question. The bookworm would definitely come up with something plausible. Armin didn't like the nickname very much, but he was used to names being thrown at him. Well, my grandfather works with a man whose son is in the Survey Corps, and he said there's a folklore tale going around the military about a black mist that slayed titans like they were child's play. So my question is, have you seen the black mist? Curious bastard, I'll give him that. It seems he pays attention to detail, but overshadows the fact that the answer is right in front of him. His mistake was trying too hard to find a reasonable construct with facts instead of going with his gut feeling. Let this be a lesson to him. Naruto smiled internally. Yeah, I've seen it, or rather, him. At the pause they seemed to be hanging on to every detail on getting the identity of the Black Mist. He's the reason the expeditions have been so successful lately. But, I'm afraid that's all I can tell you. His identity is rather confidential, and I don't want to be thrown into prison for spreading illegal information. Naruto couldn't tell if they were disappointed or appeased that they got even a sliver of information about the Black Mist. Mikasa thought she was hard to read, but Naruto saw right through her mask. He could tell the gears were spinning in her head trying to figure out the folklore legend. He didn't know what about her made him interested to find out more about her, but Eren still held the first place spot in that aspect. Naruto got up on his feet, standing only an inch or two taller than the ones gathered around him. This has been fun. It was nice meeting you all in person, Weirdo Eren, Mikasa-chan, and Bocut Armin. If you can catch me next time, then I'll tell you all my secrets, especially about the ocean. After hearing that statement, they all shared a glance before running off in his general direction. They truly do not give up when it comes to getting what they desire. I like these kids. As he rounded a corner on a cobblestone street, he disappeared into a market square full of people. The three looked around frantically for any sign of the mysterious boy, and even asked people if they had seen a blonde-haired boy wearing all black. All questions were brought to the same answer, no. He had vanished without a single clue. The black-haired girl looked at her adoptive brother and his friend. We didn't even get to learn his name. Little did they know it would be a long time until they saw him again. What do you mean? I'm not of need on this expedition. Naruto quizzically crossed his arms, staring at his superior officer preparing his horse. Commander Irwin Smith had gotten a request from a noble in the capital to gather specific medicinal herbs for a sick matriarch. Going against the order or refusing the service of Wall Sina officials was considered treason. The greed of nobility had always put themselves before the good of the common need. He had to put his men's lives on the line in order to save one person. He was informed of the essentials, and as such, needed only a few individuals to accompany him. This meant bringing along certain soldiers who specialized in medicinal herb gathering and had done a sort of mission like this before, as well as soldiers capable of defending them. Naruto did not fall under the category of medicinal specialist, nor did he fall under the category of minuscule combat, and that was final. Their mission was a quick retrieval mission, not an exploration or high-risk expedition. Therefore, his expertise of heavy assault was only needed behind the wall at the time. The blond man sighed. Listen, as much as the others would feel safer having you watch over them, it is not needed. We must not always rely on you to ensure a mission is successful. Now, report to Hang. She's running the in-wall rotations today. Naruto wasn't pleased with the idea of being left behind, but Irwin's mind was always thinking of plans A, B, and C. If he wasn't involved, then he knew it was for the best. Naruto agreed and watched as Irwin, Levi and his squad were sent beyond the walls, hopefully returning in full the same time tomorrow. He had faith in Levi, and that accounted for his doubts, knowing Levi and his comrades could handle themselves even before he set foot in Wall Maria. Now to report to the psychotic woman, Naruto cried internally. There were many things that had unnerved him in his lifetimes, yet the woman merely inches away from his face for hours on end, talking about her discoveries while prodding and inspecting your facial features. Was up there, meeting her once, you'd think she had a screw loose somewhere. But she was reliable and important to humanity's cause regarding breakthroughs with discovering the origins of the Titans. HQ mission assignments. Naruto walked into the large tent, where both ran as her lab and her makeshift mission HQ for the day. Few of the scientists in the tent had turned to view the boy everyone was familiar with now. All nodded their heads in respect for their corpsman who was single-handedly turning the tides of Titan against humanity. His reputation had only bolstered with every month and new expedition his squad was sent out on. His heroics had reached far and wide amongst the Survey Corps. Men who had assisted in combat alongside the Black Mist boasted about getting their hands dirty with him. Others called him their guardian on the battlefield, alternate aliases or not. All felt the impact of his success against the Titans. Morale had been higher than ever, knowing many people were coming back from missions. Casualty rates decreased to 7%, with 5% of those being incapacitation or injuries. An expedition success had risen 30% with each offensive against the Titans in successive order. Those who had the honor of learning his name had only described him as professional and dead-focused in the line of battle. Even when putting his life on the line, many of those he saved respected him even more so than their leading section commanders. It seemed as if Naruto were to ask them to follow him into battle against a brigade of Titans. All would do so, knowing the Black Mist led the charge. That was when he met Hang. Being her test subject was flattering, and extremely uncomfortable. Probably an experience he never wanted to endure again if met with the possibility. The experiments were another close call. If she had discovered the trace amounts of charged substance, chakra, in his body at the molecular level, his abilities would have been discovered and potentially dangerous to leak out. If they tried to reconstruct how his body ran on chakra, many people would die consuming his extremely potent chakra into their own bodies. The possibility of recreating chakra usage in this dimension was near 0%. Yo, Four Eyes, I've been assigned to you today. Hang turned around from the table she had been working on, nearly knocking over her microscope at hearing the familiar voice. Hang licked her lips in excitement while looking at him from head to toe. Sadly, as much as I know you want to spend time with Lil Ol Me, Commander had already assigned you to an assignment under the garrison regime. You're assigned under Corporal Hannes of the Engineering Corps, stationed as Wall Point 7A. Now hurry along before I have my way with you. It almost hurts sending you away, my little hero. Hang rubbed her eyes with her fists, wiping them of nearly false tears. Naruto was already out the door when he heard, "Have my way with you." The lady was sadistic and maniacal, but everyone who was a great soldier had their quirk, sadly. Her quirk was more like a lifestyle. It sends shivers up my spine just thinking about her. Psycho. Despite her ways of life, she was a detrimental piece to the Survey Corps, and she was a great leader in times of battle. Her men had utter loyalty to her, and her achievements commended her as such, so his respect was there as well, though he would never say it. Wall Section 7A. Naruto wasn't allowed to use his 3DM gear inside the walls, so he made his way slowly but surely to his destination. His assignment was most likely a checkpoint section about 25 meters from Wall Maria. He'd rather be doing something more productive, but orders were orders, even to someone like him. As he approached the checkpoint, 3 men were sitting around a table sharing a large container of alcohol. He didn't mind the calmness, but weren't military personnel meant to take their jobs seriously? He'd only seen the garrison regime a few times on in-wall assignments, but was never assigned to collaborative jobs with them. Naruto jumped down from the building he'd been perched up on a few seconds ago, startling the trio playing cards. Lieutenant Naruto reporting for assignment under Corporal Hannes of the Engineer Corps. The man known as Hannes stood and saluted lazily to the newcomer. Hannes was slightly above average height and muscular build. He had short blonde hair and a thin strip for a mustache on his upper lip. He was wearing standard military garb and the required tan coat with the insignia of the garrison regime. Hannes was off-put by the obviously young corpsman who was not only a lieutenant, but also wearing all black. The corporal also noticed a massive sword on his back that stretched nearly his entire body height. His 3DM gear wasn't the same as the other soldiers, with an almost exosuit display where wire ran up the back of the blonde's arms. Have a seat, Naruto. Say, I'm curious, how old are you, son? Naruto was expecting the question by the way the man had a puzzled look on his face from their introduction. The blue-eyed boy sighed. I'm 11 and no, I didn't go through the cadets. I was sponsored by the Survey Corps themselves. All the men looked up from their cards with a terrified look on their faces. All were bearing a small flush from the alcohol in their systems. 11 and sponsored by the Survey Corps? What the hell is going on? Hannes was the first knocked out of his stupor. That's impressive. The last to have that privilege was Captain Levi. That man is in a whole league of his own. Captain Levi is actually my squad leader. I'm his second in command now. Hannes was shaking his head. All I want is to have a normal shift and go home. Yet here I am with a child super soldier. The men shared a swig of the drink as they passed it around the table after the revealing news. Suddenly the ground shook excessively. All 4 had been thrown off their seats at that sudden earthquake. Naruto looked around for the source, but felt a massive life force just outside the wall. He saw the massive impending shadow overrun his position and continue on. Every citizen froze in their duties at seeing the huge creature grip Wall Maria. The titan before him was the tallest and largest abnormal he had ever seen. Steam protruded from its nostrils and pores on its muscled skin. Only its head peeked over the wall. Yet the wall was nearly 50 meters high. The beast had a menacing, yet focused look on its face. Compared to all other titans, this one was rid of any permanent facial expression. The colossal titan had gripped the top of Wall Maria, before blasting a hole in the front gate for titans to leak into. Rubble shot in all directions as projectiles, crushing buildings and civilians alike. As titans ranging from all sizes roamed into the new territory, screams of horror were heard sounding throughout Shiganshina. Titans were scooping any human they saw off the ground and devouring them whole before he moved on. Death and despair permeating in the air was horrifying the ones around him. Corporal Hannes, I take priority in leadership within the domain of Titan-related issues. Naruto bellowed over the scurrying crowd. You too. Evacuate the citizens and get to safety. Hannes, you're with me. No one argued at the kid giving them orders. They were all too terrified to deny his plausibility. Their jobs were clear and Survey Corpsmen took priority over Titan-related issues regardless. Before Naruto could dart off in the nearest direction, Hannes yelled, Wait, sir. There's people I have to save first. I could use your help. Please allow this one thing, sir. Hannes gripped his blades and 3DM gear in a scared scowl. Naruto was angered by the selfishness, but let it slide in favor of his request. True colors of individuals did show when faced with death. Hopefully Hannes wasn't a spineless coward. Naruto unsheathed the Zanbatsu from his back and readied the 3DM gear for fast travel. Let's go. Hannes nodded and followed in the shadow of his now superior officer. A 7-meter titan cut the corner and shot its arm out at the black-clad soldier. The ugly being had a shit-eating grin on its face, looking for its next meal to satisfy its urges. Naruto shot over the outstretched blood and flesh-engrossed fingertips. The blonde scurried at blinding speeds up the titan's bicep and twisted his body weight and momentum of a decapitating swing through the nape of the sexless creature. The blade connected with the neck and severed it from the body, covering himself in a stream of blood in the process. The blonde continued on flipping and grappling. The bloody mist evaporated from his skin, still shooting his wire out towards their destination. Hannes, how far are we out? Less than a mile. We have to hurry. I can't fight the titans like you can. I'm only a hindrance to your movements, sir. Naruto agreed subconsciously. Once he saved whoever Hannes was aiming for, he was going to order him to retreat with the others. This siege was a massacre, and he hated waiting around to take action. Even when he assessed his situation, the deaths would only continue to pile without someone holding off the advances of the creatures. Moments like these were the reason why he was here in the first place. He was the savior, and now was only the beginning. Once everyone was out of his vicinity, he could finally let loose. Jaeger household. After seeing the colossal titan kick in their front door, sending boulders all across the village, Eren and Mikasa made a beeline for their house in Lower Shiganshina district. As they came across their street, both had noticed their house was reduced to splinters and broken pieces. Eren was first to notice the irregularity at the bottom of his destroyed family home, a head of brown hair, and the tips of someone's shoulder, sticking out from underneath a part of the collapsed roof. A face stuck up harshly, trying to look upon the footsteps they heard. Eren and Mikasa stared face to face with their mom beneath their demolished house. MOM. Mikasa, help me lift this. Both kids ran to opposite sides of the column and lifted with all their might. Calluses began to burst into blood under the pressure of lifting the immovable object. Carla Jaeger opened to speak, blood pooling from the sides of her mouth. Eren, take Mikasa and go. You have to save yourselves, please. Tears started to collect in the corner of his eyes. And oh, I won't leave you, we can do it. Again Mikasa. Once again the duo tried with all the might of their 10-year-old selves with no success, only leaving Carla in more pain. Faint tremors were now getting closer by the second. A 12-meter titan with a bloodthirsty grin on its face, merely 20 meters away, it stammered, swaying, never taking its gaze away from the potential meals. Eren's mother grunted in pain. Please. I'm begging you, just listen to me for once in your life. Blood seethed between the gaps in her teeth. Mikasa, do it for me please, my final request. I love you both so much, more than you could ever know, but you must not die here, you hear me? Eren Jaeger. Blood bubbles gurgled in her mouth at the strenuous motion combined with the insufferable weight on her. The long-haired titan was now on top of them, staring down at the children and their collapsed mother. Frozen in shock, both couldn't get their limbs to move. A bloodied hand reached down for Carla, stuck under the rubble, unable to move. A black flash appeared above the titan and latched onto the crevice in its back, with a gravity-defying spin. A sword came down on the massive creature and split its head from its body through access to the nape. The beast fell to the ground, collapsing sideways into the building opposite of the Jaeger family, head detached and staring into nothingness. Hannes! Get the kids and go for the wall. I will rally a defensive position in the middle of Shiganshina until reinforcements arrive. The black-clad figure yelled at the roof adjacent to their home. Eren and Mikasa eyes widened at the familiar figure. The voice they heard was too familiar, and one they sought to hear for so long. Countless days hunting the unattainable objective of capturing him to tell them about the outside. It was the outsider, and he just saved them, standing opposite of them, a sword brought over his shoulder, ignoring their presence from more trivial matters. He just defeated that titan like it was nothing, the green-eyed boy thought internally. His trance soon ended, remembering the reason for the close call. Hannes! Help us, my mom is stuck under the rubble, hurry! The boy screamed out to his family friend. The outsider and the drunkard swung down from their positions and proceeded to heave the column off their mother with the added force. The stone and wood grumbled in protest at the added force, budging for only a few the tight window of opportunity. Eren and Mikasa dragged Carla out before the rubble came crashing down on them. The three hugged tightly, harnessing the moment to curt themselves of their emotions in each other's grasp. The black-haired girl raised her head to meet the savior's eyes for only a second. The sight left her with more questions raised. The blonde was idle and staring into the group with longing in his eyes. His blonde hair swayed in the wind, covering the dark half-lidded eyes. cerulean orbs peered out from under his blonde locks, his sideburns brushing back and forth across his face. She herself knew that face. Mikasa couldn't understand the envious nature he seemed to be emitting. He said he had nothing, but what could he really want? The black-haired girl cursed herself for not being able to read him. The blonde had a great control on his emotions, yet if something broke that uncaring facade, it was exponentially more important to him than he might have realized. The only connection she brought herself to formulate was when she had just returned to the Jaeger household for the first time. Carla had greeted her husband and son with a warming kiss and brazen, breathtaking hug. At that moment she had remembered what she lost, and could not help but feel saddened at yet another reminder of her days passed with the family of her own. The question stood in her head, what is he longing for? Are we the same? Just as soon as the moment happened, it was gone in the same manner, almost like it never happened in the first place at all, if she was correct on her assumption. The sky-blue-eyed boy was ejecting foreign emotion from his system. This mysterious soldier reminded so much of herself, yet at the same time she felt so distant from the reality of what must be tormenting his soul. She brought herself back to her feet, feelings aside. Now wasn't the time for it, nor would it be for a while. The Jaeger's legs had been crushed and seemingly broken in multiple places. Currently, she was hindered in movement, and would have to be harnessed fittingly. Now more than ever, Hannes would have to make do with carrying the mother, and having the children run besides him towards safety of the inner wall. It was the only way for both parties to complete their life-threatening tasks without fault. Splitting ways had been his strategy from the start nonetheless. Hannes, you need to carry the mother to the boats. I will hold the line here on my own. Tell Captain Levi when you see him that I fulfilled my promise to him. See you on the other side. Hannes nodded reluctantly, while Naruto gave a two-finger salute. The garrison man grit his teeth. I can't even deny his request. I'm having a child fight my battles for me. Eren and Mikasa looked at the blonde boy shockingly. He couldn't be considering going on his own. The green-eyed Jaeger blurted outsider, you can't do that. There's too many, you wouldn't survive. You still have to tell us about the ocean. Just come with us. The black-clad outsider gripped both their shoulders in anticipation. I believe you're underestimating me, weirdo. Mikasa-chan, see you some other time. He playfully tapped both on their foreheads gently with his index and middle fingers, his U-shaped eyelids rising in a gleeful smile. He stood there for a few more seconds, eyes glazed over in anticipation for combat. The blonde released his hands and strolled away with Kubikurabocho over his shoulder. Oh yeah, I forgot. I never told you my name. It's Naruto. The black mist grinned at their eyes, widening even more. Hannes, report to Survey HQ when you get to the wall. The man saluted out of respect for his fellow soldier sacrificing his life for the cause. Before running off with the family in tow, the older man grabbed both kids' hands, dragging them along, though both never averted their gazes from the retreating form of Naruto. The mysterious kid, the unknown, no family or relatives, no surname, just another soldier attending to his call of duty. Naruto vanished into the carnage without ever looking back at the fear and awe-stricken faces. He'd be facing hundreds of titans alone. I've had worse odds before. This should be easy. Market District, Shiganshina. 30 minutes after initial attack, the blonde shot his grappler at the nearest building. Launching himself at the nearest titan, he caressed his blade in his left hand, twirling it at an appropriate angle for the countermeasure strike at its nape. As soon as the blade made contact, flesh flew from its head, drenching him in evaporating blood. Mist rose off his skin like an everlasting cloud surrounding his body. 13. He motions himself for another strike from his blind spot. A slimy hand from an abnormal jumping from the roof of a bell tower, looking to strike mid-air. Before the jump, its head was already disassembled from its body, cut at the nape. 14. The bloody mist escaped his pores as he blurred past titans not faced in his direction. Clean cuts and smoking flesh was all that was left behind at the black mist encircled in the interior of this city, slaughtering everything in sight. His chakra flooded his tenketsu points like boiling water to an enclosed lid, his senses and physical abilities exponentialized, leaving his body to filter excess chakra outside his body in a blue-grayish void. The creatures around him stood no chance. Naruto vanished in black mirages, leaving behind afterimages for titans to collapse on, only to be cut down in the masses. Bodies piled and evaporated as the kill count continued to rise, with heads and discarded limbs being thrown into nearby buildings. Kubikurabocho sang in slashes, as chunks of flesh and blood continued to soak his figure, and sprayed the surrounding areas. Smoke enveloped the entire area, with zero visibility, yet the black mist continued to drop Titans by the half-dozen, only relying on his heightened senses and life force echolocation to slaughter. As he was massacring the Titans in numerous waves, a large flash of blinding yellow lightning touched ground, and its place stood a 15-meter Titan with muscled armor. The massive Titan had whitish hair and red muscles under his seemingly indestructible gray plates encompassing its body. The abnormal took a measly glance in his direction where he continued to slay in a bloody cloud of mist and decaying flash, and ignored him. The armored Titan was readying itself for a maneuver of some sort, beyond focus for a regular Titan, a sign of intelligence. Like the Colossal, its superior life force to nearby Titans was at least tenfold, rendering it alpha amongst them. It took a sprinter stance and shot off towards the inner wall, kicking up and rumbling the cobblestone streets in its wake. Remaining garrisons tried their best to stop the creature, only to be swatted or thrown away like flies. Its purpose was clear. Its line of sight was only fixated on the impending wall in front of it. Finally a challenge. Naruto smirked manically before running chakra over an invisible seal on his arm. In the poof of smoke, sat 5 Hiroshin marked tri-pronged kunai. It has been a while since I've used my father's technique. This shall be sufficient, although marking it will be the first challenge. With that train of thought, formulated strategies circulated in his mind. I have a plan, the blonde smirked to himself before disappearing in a superior version of Shunshin. Naruto shot his wire in between 2 tall buildings and prepared himself for a neck-breaking slingshot. The black-clad soldier backpedaled until he felt his gear reach its outstretched limits and potential force. He let go of the grapplers and was blasted like a cannon straight at the armored Titans, mid-back to lower neck in favor of his first marker, the nape. The large muscled beast had not been expecting his sudden intrusion, having felt a small object jammed into its armor over its vital point. In the end, the object made a mere scratch to its exterior. Naruto watched as the Titan sought to pull out the kunai only to find it lodged further into its armor, unreachable. It ignored the projectile as irrelevant, continuing to run full-blown. Time had not been on his side as the armored Titan shoulder barged through the garrison's back-line defenses and the inner wall, sending rubble and bodies flying in all directions. This was the part he was afraid of. He didn't want to reveal his powers, but of anything, they'd see his usual abilities just in a faster motion. He could win a small victory over a rather large loss as a whole. At feeling the pull of the Fuinjutsu tag, the blonde teleported to its position. He found himself crouched in the same position, immediately. The blonde was met with a giant muscled hand swiping furiously at the black-masked boy. Naruto blurred to the vital strike points on the armored body. His plan was rather simple. 5 Hiroshin tags placements on immobilizing points of the body before he could move for the execution. 2 on the Achilles heel, leaving the beast legless, followed by 2 tags on the deltoid of both arms. Precise wind-infused strikes were needed to level the bone, like a buzzsaw. This is where Kubikurabocho came into play. With the wind-infused Zanbatsu, all swipes would split the armor and provide clean swipes for rendering the limbs on its body useless. He'd lose the strength of full strikes with the limited amount of time he'd have between teleportation recharges, yet the speed would make him untouchable. Even if the Titan picked up on the pattern of his motions, the armored creature raised its first to strike at him in the midst of his side flip. Intangible speed and battle prowess met the whiffs of desperate swings. Naruto ran up the blindly swung arm at invisible speeds, ripping the 3-pronged kunai from his pocket before stomping it into the deltoid armor. Out of his peripheral vision, the opposite arm closed rapidly. The corpseman vanished with the feeling of wind rushing towards him, smirking at yet another successful placement. Sitting attached to the nape, he saw the destruction the Titan did to itself, cracking its own armor in favor of squashing him where he stood. His theory had been correct. The armor was breakable with the right amount of force applied. Now for the other 3. Naruto slashed at the nape with his blade before vanishing once again in a black stream. Not a second later, enlarged fingers of the Titan scratched at the damaged armor on its neck. Roaring in rage, below on the boat docks, Eren and Mikasa ran alongside Hannes, getting them space on the next shuttle boat out of the city. As instructed by Naruto, the garrison engineer ran off for HQ of the Survey Corp. Amongst the pandemonium, the brown-haired boy motioned for his adoptive sister to help grab their mother and get her onto the ship safely. As they carried her haphazardly onto the ship, they spotted Armin with his grandfather at the back end of the ship, leaning against the wooden cabin. Eren! Mikasa! Over here! What happened? The blonde mophead waved at the duo. He looked horrified and relieved to see his friends at the same time. After the initial wall breach, he had gone looking for help in his grandfather, while the other went looking for their mother. They all had been petrified at Wall Maria being broken down after 100 years. Now, after being out of harm's reach, felt a tad bit better, even as they knew the Titans continued to ravage their home. She got trapped under rubble. She's unconscious for now, but we need to get her to a hospital as soon as we reach Trost. Armin nodded his head in agreement, and relief of her being relatively alright. As Eren and Mikasa went to converge with Armin, another massive Titan different from the others broke through the wall. This armored Titan was broad and fitted with a gray-like plate armor. It had white hair and blazing orange beams for eyes, spewing danger in waves. As soon as the beast broke through the wall, it began to swipe at a figure dressed in black, cracking the armor with large, powerful swipes on its armor. The person was moving so fast. To everyone below, it was just a black flash. Sometimes he could be seen stabbing something into the deciphering muscles of the Titan's exosuit for mere seconds before disappearing once more. Whoever the person was, the soldier had been invisible to the naked eye of the civilian population. Armin had conjured a strategy in his head to catch a glimpse of the black flash fighting and brutalizing the armored Titan from impossible angles. In his close examination, the person stops for half seconds on the 3 immobilization points of the Titan's body, that being the shoulders, Achilles, and the nape being the most important one of all. Following the trail would be unhelpful to get a clear shot of the soldier combating by his lonesome. Therefore, focusing on a single point would give him a longer window to view the soldier. The blonde mophead stared at the left shoulder waiting for his chance. Suddenly, out of thin air, the blonde figure appeared briefly dressed in black, slashing diagonally across his body while twirling in a barreled motion. A large sword connected with the armor, sending shards in successive motions. The unusually large sword, the all-black battle attire, he had seen it somewhere before. Everyone around him stared in a stupor at the enormous Titan being beaten to one knee by a single person. It twisted and turned, driving slaps and punches into itself, only further damaging its body armor. The second time appearing in the position, Armin focused on other features. Gold locks drifted with the drastic movements of wind resistance and rapid pace of speed. The head of hair looked almost unnaturally different from anything he'd seen before. There was only one person with that style of hair. Armin's heart dropped into stomach at the possibility. Guys, I think I know who that is. With the accusation, Mikasa and Eren turned their heads to their friend, who acted like he had seen a ghost. His blue eyes shook in recognition and fear of the unknown. I focused on one point, waiting for him to appear in that minuscule amount of time. I barely caught a view of the soldier, but they had been wearing all black and a head of unruly blonde hair, while thrusting a large blade around like a feather. Mikasa and Eren looked at each, eyes wide as saucers. No way, Armin, you can't be saying that's... All three looked back at the sound of another knee hitting the ground. The Titan was screeching in misery, swiping chaotically, trying to get the nuisance off its retreating form. It's Naruto, he's alive, Mikasa said with an ever-faint smile on her lips. The blonde mophead glanced in the black-haired girl's direction. Naruto? How do you know the outsider's name? He asked in reverence. Eren took his chance to speak, seeing Mikasa in a trance of amazement. He helped us save our mom, and then went to the front line to hold off the Titans on his own. We thought he'd be dead. We had been surrounded by hundreds. But if that truly is him, then how is he so amazing? The green-eyed boy returned to the battle at hand, eyes reflecting Mikasa's own, staring off in admiration and unbelievability. The girl clasped onto every moment, wishing for his survival. Back in the battle, Naruto continued to swipe at the armored Titan. Now was his time. The battle was totally one-sided and the Titan had been immobilized. Without the usage of its limbs, there was no way it was going to survive his final onslaught of the nape. He used his gear to shoot himself up into the air to gain leverage of the neck. At the peak, he gained the necessary chakra to deliver a move meant for the decisive blow, slaughtering the Titan just like the rest of its kind, ridding the filth from this plane. He raised his blade with both hands. I win, he whispered, Shinra Tensei. Naruto screamed out. With Kubikuribocho, and the application of Gravitize Chakra, he drove his sword downward at the bare nape, only to hit nothing but air. It disappeared. Impossible! With nothing to latch himself onto, the blonde plummeted down to earth. This is going to hurt badly. Fuck me. Back on the ship, the three Shiganshina friends watched in horror as the Titan had disappeared before the final blow. They stood witness to Naruto unable to right himself in the air, free falling to his death. The friends held back breaths as he came closer to the ground, feeling the hopelessness drench the already terrified atmosphere. With his fall, an explosive wave met the ground, with humanity's hero in the middle of the destruction. The blonde sent up massive heaves of smoke and loose rock in collision with the earth. His figure laid motionless in the crater of his own making, body engraved into the gravel. Aaron ran over to the side of the ship and gripped it in rage. They couldn't catch a break. Titans won and everyone laid around while they let the foul creatures dominate their race, while Naruto fought alone. That wasn't his way of life. That's not what he wanted for his family. He asked himself in anger. Why does everyone act like nothing can be done? They saw him fight. So why does everyone continue to be cowards after seeing the potential in humanity's efforts? He threw his life away to protect us all, and everyone else just sits back and lets him fight the battle on his own. I'm gonna kill them all, every last one. He spat in between breaths, darkness protruding from his eyelids in a psychotic manner. Titans had ruled the top of the food chain for too long. He joined the Survey Corps as soon as he'd be able to, so he could slaughter 15-meter titans just like the blonde hero who laid down his life for them. Mikasa looked upon Eren seeping with rage. She too was distressed, yet she never outwardly showed it. She'd cried too many tears for a lifetime, but couldn't help but let one stray tear fall down her pale cheek. They weren't close with Naruto, or remotely knew anything about him, but listening to him say they would see him again felt so sincere. Yet she couldn't help the pit of helplessness wash over her as she watched him fall to the ground, replaying viciously in her head, was that how this cruel world reacted to signs of selflessness and sacrifice? To let heroes die, because that is the order of nature? It was infuriating, and terribly sad at the same time. Humanity would sit on its heels once again without someone like him. Life was cruel. She had been alive long enough to see it with her own eyes. Were they always destined to a life of pain and futility? Was that their role in the grand scheme of time? Watching a kid who was only a year older than them lay down his life for the sake of humanity, who never gave him anything in return, an outsider dying for them, so they could live their prude way of life giving into the elements. Mikasa promised herself, looking at the sight of his fall, I promise, your death will not have been in vain. Thank you, Naruto. All three took one last glance at the downed figure before entering Trost and getting further and further away from his body. It was a cruel world indeed. At the sight of Collison, garrison members stood over the heavy-breathing body in shock and terror. The blonde, black-clad figure had survived the 15-meter fall to the ground and was getting up on his feet. Son of a bitch. That fucking hurt. Naruto was keeled over trying to regain the breath knocked out of him. Minuscule amounts of blood escaped his mouth before straightening himself out with a smile on his face. His body was riddled in cuts and gashes everywhere along his body. The black mask he wore was in threaded pieces, hanging loosely off his face. Blonde hair was matted and threaded with blood-red streaks. Kubikuru Bocho stood strong at his side, showcasing a few dull marks and the occasional drop of blood. He noticed the surrounding troops approaching him with restriction. Could you stop looking at me and get me a commanding officer? There's something they need to know. Troops in earshot ran around calling for medics, and scurrying for a section commander on site. It was all so unruly for one person, how befitting of the garrison regime. Naruto was sure of himself and what he saw and felt inside the Titan. There was someone controlling the Titan, and he could feel the ominous life force of intellectual decision-making that would only translate to a human's financial function of synapses. That combination of spiritual balance and barely retained stench of power, that feeling was unmistakable. It was exactly the same as him. And one thing was for certain, whoever had attacked the was going to come back for more.